Hello and welcome again to another episode of One Starfish, where our mission is to help change the world one person or one starfish at a time. As always, guys, make sure to rate, review, subscribe, share. That's how we get the word out about what we do. I'm really excited for our guest today. Veronica is a financial coach and an author. Her book is Making Money is Simple, and it's about not living paycheck to paycheck. She'll get into it more. She's also an opera singer, which I was like, can we get her to sing on the podcast? Also helped in the military. Her husband is military. This lady is amazing already, and I've just talked to her for a few minutes. So I'm excited for you all to get to know her. Welcome to the show, Veronica.
Thank you so much for having me, Angela. And your story is extremely inspiring too.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Well, I'm so excited to get into your story. So you worked in a few different areas before like transitioning into like financial coaching, like actually doing this thing, which is really helpful. Tell us a little bit about like your upbringing and what got you in, what started you in the world, and then how you got to where we're at.
Yeah, it's apt that you asked about my upbringing. So I came from a single mother background, and my mother's an immigrant, so she came here in the 80s and had one of those stories like came here with nothing in her pocket kind of thing. And so I had a very unconventional maybe it's actually a lot more common, but particularly in America, but for any in Canada too, tons of immigrants. Had one of those upbringings where pre-social media, I felt very odd in school. I grew up in New York, so it was very socioeconomically diverse, and so always kind of thought like, oh, like I don't feel like the other kids. Like we don't go on vacation. Like we don't buy clothing. Like all my stuff is hand-me-downs from people at church. Um, Kind of felt weird and but didn't know why. I was blessed to grow up pre-social media where the comparison trap wasn't constantly in your face. And then I got to college and then it was like more in my face, just how stark the mix of socioeconomic backgrounds. I also joined the military in my first year after my first year of college and then meeting people from all across the country with different backgrounds. That was a stark contrast as well. And so that's a little bit about my upbringing. But then going into my corporate career, I graduated in '09. So it was during the Great Recession. I tried to enter the job market, and the jobs that were available were pretty much sales related. And so and certainly commercial real estate, which I talk about in my book, was not on my background, was not on my radar, sorry, at that time. So I started working for a startup commercial energy company. It was commercial solar development, and it was very nascent in New York City at the time. And I really liked startup operations, just being able to get my hands involved in everything from sales, marketing, pitching to executives, doing operations, getting materials onto a construction site, pulling permits, like moving through bureaucracy, doing everything really, and getting to see all parts of the business. Then I was speaking with a lot of commercial solar developers and building owners, like people who had massive footprints as far as owning large commercial buildings, and then started to get the real estate bug, and it was kind of they were buying up lots of commercial properties, um, these high net worth individuals, and so then went back to school, got my MBA and graduated in 2017. That's when I graduated and I had like six figures of debt. I At that time, my husband and I then had moved to Austin, Texas. I started getting into multifamily owning and operating, and was working with a commercial real estate not developer, yeah, owner and operator, and was working in asset management. And I witnessed personally how these high net worth individuals manage their money and how they thought about money and how they thought about new ventures and saw how they underwrote properties and how long term thinking they were. So they weren't just like I talk about on my Instagram how I shifted my mindset from cash flow management to strategic budgeting, which is rather than just like income in and then expenses out, and hopefully you don't go below zero, just that paycheck to paycheck.
Mhm.
I started thinking about what is the long-term outcome that I want? When do I want it to occur? And then sort of like reverse engineering that outcome. So I was able to, just literally put it on paper and then be like, what is it that I'm willing to sacrifice? What trade-offs am I willing to make? Whether that be work extra to increase the top line, or like what am I willing to cut to sort of make this happen on the time frame that I want it to happen. So once I put that together, I couldn't unsee it. Like I was doing the asset management and putting together property budgets for these multi-million-dollar properties, and was seeing like, oh, they get these 20% returns or whatever it is they make, these teen returns, because they're planning it ahead of time and then they're executing on the plan. And then when I saw that, I was able to apply those principles to my personal finance. But it really wasn't like I had a business degree, I had an MBA. None of those things allowed me to get there. It was when I got into the real world and started seeing how rich people did it that I was able to finally apply those principles to my own life, and then take my starting salary out of my MBA, and which was a median income salary, and make that 100,000 go away in 3 years.
It's amazing. So how do you start to shift that thought process? You said you had to kind of do some shifts. What was your way of shifting? And I know you probably talk about this in the book. I'm guessing a little bit about this. How do people go about to shift their mindset from immediate to
Yeah.
long term?
Oh gosh, it's a really good question. So I talk in my book, I have what's called my ARIA money model, which is like a singing word. So it's a four-step process. It's an acronym. And so the four steps roughly are going through the framework are: A is awaken. So that's becoming aware that you might have issues. You might have some like deeply held limiting beliefs. You might have some entitlement. For me, I had to deal with like my resentment from childhood and just sort of unpack like, okay, I think I'm trying to keep up with people who our lives are not the same at all.
Mhm.
And I can't compare myself to them. Like we just don't have the same lifestyles. We didn't come from the same upbringing, and we're not starting at the same place. Like I can have a positive outcome, but I need to deal with the cards that I was dealt. So awakening to that. And then the second step is R, reframe, which is sort of, okay, rather than thinking of what I have to sacrifice in a negative way, what is it that I stand to gain? And then, for me, being able to put it in writing and put it in Excel, and see how quickly I could achieve it if I just buckled down. And that it was actually attainable. Like sometimes you just get stuck in resignation and you think, "Oh, gosh, what is the point? Like I'm never going to be
Never
able
gonna
to
get it.
achieve this. So like YOLO, right?" But once you actually are like, dang, if I did just buckle down for this limited period of time, like I can get out of this and I can really change the trajectory of my future, but I have to be willing to do that. And but it is within my control. So just taking that agency. The third step is I for setting intentions. So then once you are able to reframe your thoughts, and become aware of your money triggers, then you can finally set the intention for the future. And that's when you can sort of start to dream really big and have dreams that you never thought you could have, because you can take control of your money, and then actually funnel it towards the activities and the values that are important to you. Then the last step is action. So it's only when you've overcome all that stuff, like undoing the programming of society that's so prevalent, and like undoing the marketing that's constant, that you're able to stop spending money on impulses that if asked, would you want to trade this number of dollars for this thing, like that can just slip away little by little. I don't think people would be making those trades if they were aware that it was happening.
That's so good. So what do you see as the biggest roadblock though for people like you said, they kind of see that there's no end. So if someone's listening to this and like, oh, that sounds great, Veronica, but like I'm broke, money's tight, I'm living paycheck to paycheck, I have nothing left over. Like, where do they start?
Yeah, I think it really is for me. I have what's called the money simple method, and so that's also an acronym. But
I like the
I
acronym.
start with the SMART goal, and I really am. I like that reverse engineering. So first, before thinking like it's not attainable, what is the goal that you're trying to attain, and like what's a reasonable time frame? Because some people think that there's nothing to cut or that they can't do anything, but I think that they're just they need to realize that maybe they're not seeing clearly because of their emotions. So my sort of method is I go through, it's a very asset management. I go every line item and I really think about whether this is a default operating assumption that we've just taken for granted. Because when I was able to do, turn it around, there were things that we cut that I think a lot of people would think is crazy.
Like,
But
give us some examples.
yeah, yeah. So we didn't have any furniture in our first apartment. Luckily, my husband is extremely frugal and had like a very lower middle class upbringing as well. And so was totally a willing partner in this. And I would say he's more frugal than I am, I would say. So he was totally didn't want to spend a dime. We had this goal when we moved in together and got married and wanted to buy a house the following year. He didn't want to spend a dime on any furniture. So we like had like he used like boxes as tables and like
Oh,
yeah, we didn't spend a dime on that apartment
I
because we're
love
like
this.
we're gonna have a house in a year. We're going to have a house in a year. Like we just like we're not spending any a dime on any furniture. We didn't have internet. We didn't even he didn't want to even want to spend the hookup on the internet. I like we moved to Austin the first year after I graduated, and we had a Starbucks down the street. So I would just walk to the Starbucks. He's like, "You're gonna work all day and night anyway, so might as well just have that be your limiter." So I would go to the Starbucks and like do whatever I needed to do, and then come home until I got the commercial real estate job. But yeah,
Mhm.
we didn't even bother doing that. He would download shows on like his tablet and we would just watch that at home. Like things like that people really do take for granted
You
in the
really do.
Western world.
Yep.
Um I have this funny story as well
Yes.
in my book. Like I certainly wouldn't say this was something from my childhood, but growing up my mother, she didn't really assimilate. Like I didn't know that she didn't assimilate until like my first sleepover when I was already a teenager. So so the first time I went to a sleepover, I was like, "Oh my gosh, what is going on?" Like I saw the shower head. I didn't know what the shower heads were for. Like
You didn't have
we
a
just
shower.
took we had a garden tub, but we never used the shower portion, and we would just like fill a basin and do a basin bath, and that I thought was like a normal thing until I got to my first sleepover at 13 and was like, oh my God, I didn't know that people live this way. And so that first
You were
moment,
raised very frugal.
very frugal, yes. So that first moment was, when I think back on it, like my first experience with opportunity, I'm sorry, inflation lifestyle creep. Um, so when I got back home, I certainly was like, I'm definitely going to use this. And my mom was like, why are you wasting water? So that was a paradigm shift from my childhood that I was like, oh man, like in one moment, my life opened up. So I think that there are moments in my life where I'm like, I'm not seeing clearly, or there's something that I'm not seeing that like with one piece of information, your life can change drastically. Um, I've always had that because I've had experiences in the past like that. And then also like not taking things for granted, things that we just assume are needs that are not actually needs in all of the world. So if we're not going to die from not having it, it's not actually a need.
Right.
So people
I
don't
mean, I
want to
don't
hear
need
that. People
Netflix.
don't want to hear that, but if you want to make something happen and you're willing to sort of sacrifice for a
Mm.
short period of time to free up some cash flow, you could turn it around faster than you think, and then it'll be a good story.
So good. I know whenever I just resonate with this so much because when I quit my job and went into business, I realized that I had to like make sure that I wasn't spending because I didn't want to touch my savings. And I remember like watching my grocery bill, and that first full year of business, I saved all my groceries and I spent $965 in groceries in a whole year. So I lived on $1,000 of groceries in a whole year. And
Wow.
so I resonate. I did have furniture. I lived on groceries. So I resonate with that whole like I was like, and I mean I lived fine. But yeah, I resonate with that. Like, what are you willing to do, and how tight can you get when your goal, whatever your goal is, to really make it happen? And I know people listen to this. I mean, I think in North America we're growing up in such an affluent society that it's really hard to picture like, what do you mean you're driving like an older car? What do you mean there's no like payments? Like, that kind of thing.
Absolutely.
Um,
Yeah, it's like not even a thought. Some people just live that way their whole life. They don't know that they actually don't need that to have that
yeah,
payment.
because it's keeping up with the Joneses and it's easy. Like I said, like right now I drive a 2014 Volkswagen. I'll make a multiple six figure. And so people are like, what are you doing? And I'm like, well, I like my car actually. It's funny though, because people get after you, start thinking, well, do I need to buy a new car? Should I have a nicer car? Then I'm like, Angela, you don't really care. So why would you spend your money on that? I'm like, oh, that's smart. Like, so really, like,
Absolutely.
yeah, like what is it
Absolutely.
that you can give up and what is it you can't give up?
And what do you actually care about? Like that,
Yeah.
I'll talk about that in my book too, that we just don't we don't look at our operating expenses and think, is this something that I actually care about, or is this something that I was influenced into buying? And like, what
Right.
do I actually want to be spending my
Yeah,
money
friends are like telling us what we should do and like giving us a hard time, but like we're fine. So
on?
yeah, wow, that's so cool. So you put a lot of yeah. So I think that's like anyone listen to this, going through that, what is it that you can give up? Maybe it is something you don't actually care about, but you're like
Mhm.
doing it because everyone else told you should care about it. And you're like, oh,
Yep.
maybe I don't need to care about it because there's more important things. That's really cool. And then digging back to your childhood is important. Like, why do you think the way you think?
Yep.
Like you
Yep.
were talking about how you're raised and stuff. That's awesome. And when you watch these wealthy people think differently, so you talked about strategic, like long term, also in the investment world. What did you see, and how can someone maybe start to apply that to their actual reality?
Yeah, I think the first thing that I saw just holistically is that there never was anything that was off the table. Like there was they didn't start the conversation with like, oh, I can't do this, or like we've never done this before. There was no thought of we've never done this before, so I'm not going to try it. It was like, how do
How
we
can we
make
make
this
it?
happen? That's it. And um, there's this book, Who Not How. That one,
Yes,
yeah, yeah.
good
So
book.
it's such a great book. And I've used coaches in my life, and I realize, like, in my book, in the last chapter, I put together how my use of coaches kind of unlocked how I wanted to give back and start doing coaching as well, because of the gift that it gave to me. I just realized my whole life I had been relying on coaches. I had been in sports, I had been, in music, I had all sorts of mentors through that, and then business mentors. Um, and I actually did use, when I moved to this new area, now that I'm living on the West Coast, we moved in again in 2022. Um, as my husband got restationed again, I found myself a singer in a new market, and it's sort of like starting your business all over again. And so I did work with a music business coach and was able to ramp up my singing business as well, um, so that that could remain a part of my life. And I, kind of wanted to make it happen quickly. So that was so positive that I was like, you know what? I'm gonna loop back and start that coaching business. And so I, wrote the book, published it, and launched the business last year after having, informally done coaching for several years. But
Right.
um yeah, so I think I lost the original question in there.
I don't know where we
That's
were going. It was good. I was like,
okay.
I was just listening. I'm like, this is so cool. What got you into opera? Opera.
Opera. Yeah. I mean, I had always done church singing. And then
I
when
still
I
want to hear
got
you sing, but I don't know if that works. But
I can send some links. Yeah, I'll
cool.
send
Okay,
you.
we'll have those in the show notes, guys.
Okay, that sounds good. Yeah, I had always done church singing. I played violin as a young girl. So was had the music background. And then when I got to high school, I did drama and I started winning competitions and getting into like state orchestra and state choir. And so knew that I could make a some sort of career of it.
Uh,
Then when I got into college, I was recruited into the army and they were like, "Hey, did you know you can actually sing for your job?" And so I sang around the world and, have performed for
wow.
like a pope and a president and like, um, did lots of ambassador stuff and sang in New York City and did all sorts of openings and political events. So that's how I started that career and then have, done a variety of subgenres of just classical singing, I would say. So anything from church work, opera, formal, concert work, film, that kind of thing. So um have just always done it. I didn't know any different. I've been doing it since I was a little girl and I just had some raw talent and I think what I love about it is that it is so, music and business, I find them so complementary even though they seem so disparate in discipline, but they're just such long-term endeavors and then you never get it perfect. And with the voice, actually your body's always changing and so your instrument is always changing,
Right.
so it's just like one of those evergreen endeavors that you can't ever master, but you try to just have as a practice. It's like almost a meditation.
That's so cool. And then you said, you started your business. When you started your business, did you have a lot of people or any people that really were like, what are you doing? Or by then, had you kind of just like people just like, yeah, go get it? Did you have a lot of naysayers, I guess they call them?
Yeah, I just recently wrote a post about this and like having naysayers in your life and having people with scarcity mindset around you. I sadly have gotten used to having naysayers in my life, mainly from unfortunately people that are like closest to
Normally
you.
the
It can be like
closest.
your
Yeah.
family. So on I kind of have disciplined myself to just hold these things close to me for until they're kind of ready to go.
Gotcha.
So I started just doing um informal stuff and I was able to work that for a long time and then, get my materials together. And I put it away for a couple years, like I said, during COVID, and then we moved. And then when I picked it back up, I just started doing market research just with people that I knew would be receptive to it in circles that I knew would be receptive to it
Mhm.
and testing the materials, like testing them on real people, make sure that they would get value from it. And then when I started putting the book together, I did that sort of very hush hush. Only my husband knew about it. I really didn't say anything until probably the month before when I was getting everything ready to go and I kind of had to run it by my company and like be like, is it cool if I have this other business
Side
going
gig.
on? It's not a competing business. And they were like, yeah, that's cool. And but yeah, it wasn't until I had already written it that I was starting to put it out there like a month before. And some people didn't find out till I published it. So I think that unfortunately, if you don't have, a huge circle around you, that is abundance mindset, and are coming from perhaps that socioeconomic class that is stuck in that scarcity mindset, you are kind of a weird person that just like has these big dreams and like, I'm talking to weird people, but for some people it's not weird.
Crazy. Yeah.
Um,
World.
but if you are one of those people where you're kind of feel very alone in trying to do big things, then I think that maybe it's best to hold these things kind of close until they're a little more ready to go. Because otherwise, man, can
People
people,
kill your dreams.
yeah, they can just like stamp out those dreams.
Mhm. Oh man. I mean, I hope you guys are listening to this because this is so, so needed. and so good. Like if you're listening to this and you are one of those people that thinks you're like everyone around you always laughs at everything you say, well, one thing I will add to it is maybe you need to find new friends, and find new associations. Cause like I love what Veronica said whenever she's listening to these wealthy people and how none of them are like, oh, we can't do that. They're all like, how do we do that? And even that made me think, I'm like, who am I around when I say something? Are they like, oh, that's been tried before? Or are they like, yeah, that's been tried before, but how could we make it happen? And just making sure you're surrounding yourself with people that think bigger, act bigger, willing to do bigger. And then your dreams actually will start to sound small and you'll start to stretch them. So,
That's happened to
and
me
the
so
people that
many
aren't,
times.
don't talk to them about what your dreams are because they'll crush them.
Yeah.
They're little like little shoots in the ground and they'll just like
Gosh, and then we know when it does take off, then they're like, "Oh, you're so lucky."
yeah. Or I've always believed in you. I knew you could do it.
Oh, yeah, 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 for
Yeah,
sure.
I was the biggest fan. I'm like, not according to my text messages, but anyway, just let them go with it. You're like, yes, yes,
Just
you
go with it.
just
Yeah.
go with it. And just realize that, like I said, this is huge. If you're listening to this, don't let other people, if I read this somewhere, heard this somewhere, if the thought is in your mind, it's because you're meant to do it. So it's not because it's too big. If you're like, man, I want a jet and I want an island or whatever you're thinking, you wouldn't be thinking it if it wasn't possible for you. So, think about that. Yeah. And that's so cool. And obviously your spouse, I mean, can tell he's a very supportive person. So that's really important. That's really important. It's number one fan is your spouse.
Oh, yeah.
Get them on board. If you're listening to this, you have a spouse, get them on board. That's important. And then you went out and released the book. What do you see this going in the next 5 to 10 years? What's your vision for coaching and stuff?
Yes. So, it's so interesting, you can put stuff out there, but like you said, sometimes you put a dream out there and then it's live in the world and you don't even know what's going to come back to you. So sometimes you can't envision this. But what I would like is to get to a point where I can just be doing leaning into me being a creative and then also being the business owner. So I am currently working a full-time job and doing this and doing that.
Yeah.
So if I could get these to steady state so that I can really lean into my values of art and serving others, that's my broad hope for the
Music
future.
and money.
Music and money.
I like it. That's a good combination. And your story is incredible. So I always have three final questions before we wrap up, and then anything we didn't touch on that you think would be really impactful. Guys, we'll have all the links to Veronica and her information, her singing, her book, all that stuff in the show notes. So make sure to get this book especially if you're struggling and you're feeling that way, or you know someone, buy it for them. Anyway, first and final question is, if someone's looking for their purpose, what's one sentence you would say that could help them find it?
What's something that lights you up, that serves others, but that you would be willing to do for free anyway?
Yeah, good. Second question, what's a favorite quote and why?
Um, I think of that Coelho quote, when you want something, all the universe conspires in helping you to achieve it.
It's a good one. And third question, what's one word or sentence you want on your gravestone?
Okay, the first thing that comes to mind, and this is a little cliche for on the opera singing side, but I don't know how many opera singers are going to be listening. Um, Visi d'arte, visi d'amore, which means I lived for art, I lived for love.
I've never heard that one on a call yet, so that's cool. I love it. All right, you might have someone in the coffee shop. They're like, Veronica, that's really good. Starting to like go through my assets and seeing what I don't need. I'm cutting out all these things and trying to get ahead. But what's something we didn't touch on today that you think would be really impactful for our listeners?
I think that the importance of guarding your energy and minding the company you keep as actually maybe the most important way to start getting control of your finances. Like you said, just do and prove to yourself that you can do
Mhm.
um, before letting the haters get in. You can achieve it.
That's so good. Yeah, I agree with that. Guys, let's go out there, share this for sure. Reach out to Veronica if you have any questions on anything. Obviously, you can tell she's super approachable. I'm happy to help. And her, like I said, her stuff will be all in the show notes. Let's go out there. If we can help one person or one starfish, if we can help one starfish at a time together, we can change the world. Thanks for being on, Veronica.
Thanks for having me, Angela.